Hello, everyone. My name is Francisco Tizen, President and CEO of A Better Chance. Thank you for joining us for this evening's panel. I am so excited for today's program as it is a part of our emerging focus on supporting A Better Chance scholars and alumni and exploring post-secondary educational opportunities and career pathways. In the weeks and months ahead, you will hear more about our new scholar and alumni success team, who will be leading implementation of our programming focused on post-secondary and career readiness. Please keep an eye out for these communications, and if you haven't yet, please be sure to visit the website, betterchance.org. Click on alumni and the Connect With Us link to update your contact information. If you don't currently follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, please do so, because that's another means of hearing the latest news on the organization and exciting programs like tonight. This evening, we are in store for a terrific conversation on careers in asset management with our friends at State Street Global Advisors. For 4 decades, State Street Global Advisors have helped its clients, the world's governments, institutions, and financial advisors achieve their financial goals in what is sometimes an uncertain investing world. Helping millions of people secure their financial futures, State Street Global Advisors is the world's 3rd largest asset manager, with approximately over $3 trillion under their care. Their work is driven by employees in 31 offices around the world, some of whom you will meet today and learn more about their career trajectory. Special thanks to Janelle Jefferson, Managing Director at State Street Global Advisors and a member of the A Better Chance Board of Directors, for making tonight possible. My appreciation and thanks to Rebecca Babbitt-Schaaf on the State Street team for spearheading the implementation of tonight's program. A couple of pro tips before we get underway. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, you can click on the speaker view. That is sometimes helpful so that you are registering who is speaking in that moment. I know sometimes in these big group settings, it's hard to keep track. Also, if you have questions as the panel is going on, feel free to write your questions in the chat. We'll also have an opportunity for you to raise your hand and ask your question later on during the program. So you have 2 options and choices for getting your questions registered. And without further ado, it is my pleasure to turn things over to our moderators this evening, Susana Chiros, Vice President of Talent Acquisition, and Jaime Rocha, Vice President of Private Investments. Susana, Jaime, take it away.
Thank you very much, Francisco. We are so delighted to be partnering with ABC and to have the opportunity to speak with all of you today. As Francisco mentioned, my name is Susana Rojas Chiros, and I'm the head of talent acquisition for Global Advisors. I actually started my career at State Street fresh out of college many years ago in our fund accounting department. It was a really wonderful first job, and it opened up my eyes to the financial services industry. I left for a number of years and came back almost 7 years ago in an HR capacity. Today, we have a great panel that we have put together for you. Each of our panelists have very different career paths that they will be sharing with you. They'll be sharing their insights and personal stories. We will also leave some time at the end of the session, as Francisco mentioned. I'll turn it over to my colleague Jaime now, who will provide a quick overview of State Street Global Advisors and a brief introduction.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jaime Rocha. I'm really happy to be here. I work on the private equity team at State Street Global Advisors. I joined the firm roughly 4 years ago after graduating from business school. I initially came over to work out of our Boston office. While I was at State Street, I moved to Connecticut, and now I live in Florida post-pandemic, trying to stay safe at my house. So have had some experience at State Street now for 4 years. Prior to that, prior to business school, I should say, I worked in financial services for quite a while. Started my career in 2004 at UBS. So I've been around for quite a long time, and happy to share some perspectives. So before we get started today, as Susana said, maybe it makes sense for me to provide a little bit of background on State Street. Francisco did a great job, so he stole a little bit of my thunder here, but I'll try to maybe reiterate. So Global Advisors is a division within a broader company called State Street Corp. The Global Advisors business is just the asset management arm. It's been around for roughly 40 years. During that time, we've built a universe of active and index strategies across multiple asset classes. So this includes things like equities, fixed income, and alternative investments. We serve mostly institutional clients and financial advisors rather than retail, and offer a variety of products such as mutual funds and exchange-traded funds, which trade in they're like a mutual fund but trade in an exchange. You may recognize the ETF business because it's got a cool name called Spiders, and the reason I say you might recognize it is because we advertise quite a bit in TV and some of the newspapers, as it's a really popular product for most people when they choose to invest in the stock market. We're actually pioneers in the space. Our company created the first ETF a long time ago. And today we still manage the world's largest ETF, and it's the most actively traded, which is called SPY, S-P-Y. As far as size and scale, as Francisco said, we're the world's third largest asset manager with over $3 trillion in assets under management. We've got a global footprint with 10 investment centers, 2,500 employees, and roughly 500 investment professionals. And we serve 2,400 clients across 64 countries. So pretty big footprint. The last thing I'll probably say is we have a clearly defined mission, which is to invest responsibly and enable economic prosperity and social progress. An example of this is, because of our scale, we led a campaign called Fearless Girl, and there's been some press around that. And it was really to use our power and influence to advocate for increased gender diversity in boards. So that's kind of an example of how we use our scale to drive some positive change in society. With that, why don't we start by going around and having this distinguished panel introduce themselves. And I think we'll start with Monet, if that's okay. And maybe Monet, you can mention how long you've worked at State Street and what is your role currently?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. My name's Monet Ewing. I am at SSGA with all the people on this panel that you'll be talking with. I have actually been with State Street for 27 years, and I hesitate to say I joined in 1993 because probably that's around when some of you might have started school or even been born, but I have been here for quite some time. I'm actually right now working in the company stock group, and then what that group does, it oversees employer securities, and an employer security is every company or every public company has a security. State Street has its own security. Some of the companies that you might be familiar with, Google has a security, and Amazon. And what we do in our group is we make sure that holding a security is good for people in retirement plans. So it's kind of, we call ourselves senior fiduciary officers. So I'm a senior fiduciary officer. I'll talk to you later about how I came, but I actually am a lawyer by trade, and now I work on the business side. So happy to talk with you about how I access the asset management side of the business.
Thank you. How about Khary? You want to provide a quick intro?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name's Khary Dennis. I've been with State Street, similar to Susana, since I graduated from college. That's been for the last 4.5 years now. Currently, I'm an assistant vice president on the private equity team, and due to the pandemic, I'm currently located in Atlanta. I'm happy to I actually had the pleasure of sitting in a lot of your guys' shoes not too long ago as a Better Chance scholar myself, and so I'm happy to be with you all this evening.
Thanks, Khary. Why don't we go to Stanley?
Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here today. My name's Stanley Andre, and I work on the intermediary business group. It's such a mouthful to say, but the long story short, what I do is I support financial advisors and ensure that they're allowing their clients to meet their financial goals. And what we specialize in is ETFs. They're exchange traded products. They trade over the exchange. It's an ownership of a company within a bundle. If the best way I can sort of describe it is, everyone knows a bag of Skittles. Let's pretend that each individual Skittle is an individual stock, whether it be Amazon, Google, Facebook, Netflix, and I sell the bag of Skittles to financial advisors so that they can grasp for their individual clients. So very happy to be here with you all. I started my career here in Boston. I've been at State Street for over 5.5 years now, almost 6.5 years. And now I support, again, registered investment advisors and independent broker dealers across several states in the Southeast. So now I'm based in Atlanta, but I'm up here for the holidays in Boston.
Stanley, I love that analogy of the Skittles. We'll have to go back to that a little bit later. But I'd be curious to have you all tell this group how you got started in asset management. How did you end up at SSGA? I think, when you're in high school or even starting out college, a lot of us didn't know what we wanted to do. And so I think it would be interesting for this group to understand your journey. So Monet, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Like Susana said, I never thought of asset management as a career. I probably didn't even know what it was back then, but I knew early on that I wanted to be a lawyer. So when I went to college, I took courses. I didn't, major in any courses that dealt with business or math because I just was trying to steer clear away from that. But I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, and I was a French and poli-sci major in college, and I ended up going to law school. After law school, I went on and I got a master's in law, and I knew I wanted to work in something that dealt with code. So I liked things like the Internal Revenue Code or the SEC. They have their own code. So I liked, hard rules and regulations that I wanted to work with. And when I came out of school, I applied to State Street in their legal division. And I ended up coming to State Street and working in the legal division. And in the end, that was my way of moving over to the business side. I used to support what I now sell and what I now work with on the business side. So I used to be the lawyer that supported other people who worked in my area. And then there was an opportunity for me to move over and to do the business side of what I'm doing. And that's how I ended up at State Street in asset management.
That's great. Thank you. Can you, in your words, tell us what asset management is? How would you describe that?
I would say that for State Street, what we focus on are different types. Stanley talked about one type, which is kind of the bundles that underlie and the stocks that underlie that bundle. And Khary's going to talk about kind of his role. But for me, company stock is a different type of asset. So they're all types of instead of just having cash, and I'm probably not describing it well because I'm a lawyer, but so I'll actually hand it over to Jaime, but it's company stock is a type of asset. And so that is for me, what we take care of as a fiduciary. And my other colleagues have other types of assets that they focus on and they take care of on behalf of plans and participants in plans and plan sponsors. So maybe I'll hand it over to Jaime or Khary or Stanley.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you my description of asset management, which is basically we're managing money on behalf of our clients, and our clients are primarily institutions or like what what Stanley was saying. His clients are financial advisors who are then people like us, people that have, regular, IRAs or money that they're investing. But Stanley, why don't we turn it over to you and tell us how you got started in asset management and how did you end up at SSGA?
Yeah, for sure. I think it'd be, silly of me not to give a little bit more of a background to myself. So I went to University of Massachusetts. I was a student athlete. I played football all 4 years. Scott, I saw you raise your eyebrows there. I see you on video. I played football. I played linebacker. Going through school, I think everyone that plays any type of sport, obviously wants to, at some point in time, potentially go, towards the professional level. But someone always told me the wise words, knowledge is power at the end of the day. And I decided to, really take education seriously. I was a economics major at the University of Massachusetts, or a resource economics major. And essentially what that is just economic theory applied with business principles. So I took advantage of that. And, after school, I tried towards the professional landscape, had a brief, extremely brief stint with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Very cool experience. But I think sports brought me to a place that I never thought it could have. It teaches you the discipline. It teaches you the aspect of the grind, being able to work hard. And I took all those traits and brought it, over to what I do on a professional basis. So, quite frankly, I'm sort of forgetting the question that you initially asked, Susana. But,
that's okay. We all love hearing about all of your sports, and it's certainly really, really interesting. I've always thought that the team orientation that sports has and the competitive nature have lent itself very well to client-facing roles. But the question was around, how did you get started in asset management, and how did you end up at SSGA?
Perfect. So after obviously, sports ended during that period of time, I started looking for jobs. And, through the background of resource economics, I'd done many internships, throughout my collegiate career. I worked at an insurance company because I wanted to do sales. I'm sure you've all seen Wolf of Wall Street or any type of movie of that such, and I just love working with people. The financial services aspect, or the financial services world, just allows you to take your importance and what you think makes sense across the landscape, and really support those that are trying to raise assets for their end client. So I started through the internship. I took that as the experience, and I then started interviewing for jobs that I thought was relatable to the sales app. Like I mentioned before, I love speaking to people. I love helping people, and the financial services area is perfect for that. I later landed an interview with State Street. Seemed to have done well. It's actually funny that the person that I did the interview with, I actually used to sell pizzas to when I worked at a local deli shop growing up in high school. I guess my other words of wisdom there is, always respect the people that you see on a daily basis, because you never know when you're going to see them again. It was just funny to be able to share that memory with her. And then once, I went through the interview process, like that, I learned that finance is where I wanted to be. I have heavy interest in understanding money and how it grows. My mom growing up used to always say, why don't you just save your money? And quite frankly, I never understood why she asked to save. But once you save those assets, or whatever, if you can save $5, you can start investing that $5 to maybe grow it to $10, and grow that $10 to $20. It's the compound sort of component of growing assets that really enticed me to get into finance. So after that period of time, got my interview, went through the interview process, and landed a job at State Street. So I think it's a long effort that I went through, including sports, including academics, and I guess the deli shop too.
That's great. Thank you for that. Khary, how about you? Tell us how you got started in asset management and how did you end up at SBA?
Awesome. I might piggyback a little bit off of Stanley's comments. I think sports played a big role in my life as well. I went to Williams College. I played lacrosse, and I think, like you said, some of the playing sports, it brought a discipline, a work ethic, and certain skill sets that you're able to bring into the professional world. I think for myself, I was even as a kid, I was always an analytical and quantitative person, and so as I had conversations with peers and peers' parents and relatives, I was introduced into the financial world, and I sought after internships kind of in that space in college, and I was fortunate enough to get an internship at GE Asset Management my sophomore year and junior year, where I had roles in risk management and investment solutions. But more so through those kind of internships experiences and meeting other people in different roles, I was able to determine, that asset management was a space that aligned with my interests and goals, and I saw a career path there. And so by the time I graduated, GE was actually purchased by State Street, and so I was fortunate to begin my career there. I think in that journey I mentioned, I think I talked about having conversations, and I just want to stress the importance of finding mentorship and guidance from others in your journey. Always be willing to kind of reach out and get advice from others, as it's kind of helped me to get to figure out exactly what I wanted and to get to where I am now.
Right. And how I was just going to say, how did you build your network? And, it's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know. And, and there's so many opportunities that exist that people may just not know about. And so it is very important to talk to people on a regular basis and to, just learn about what's out there. How did you do that, Khary? You talked about, how you were talking to your friends' parents and just started learning more about what was out there.
Yeah, so I think it's just starting looking, friends, parents, relatives, people close to you, even if it's teachers, understanding. It's helpful just to, I think asking a lot of questions is always just being inquisitive. Is how you really find out a lot of information. And it opens doors to things you might not know are there, as far as career-wise or job opportunities. And so I think that mostly was just as a kid, just being super inquisitive about, oh, what do you do, and what does that mean, and just continue to reach out to people and that you meet, or even at panels like this, as you hear something that you're interested in, reach out after to for advice or just to have more conversation. And one thing I wish I did more of that, I'll get into that more, but one thing I did wish is, don't be discouraged, if you're reaching out and you don't hear back from one person, just because there are a lot of people out there who are willing to, help you and kind of guide and mentor you along the way. And all it really takes is one person to take that interest. So, just continue to reach out to people that, you think would align with, what you're trying to do.
That's great.
Hey, Khary, I think your kind of your grit, you're kind of telling a little story about you kind of breaking into different areas, and sometimes breaking into a very specific area within asset management is hard. I think it's really hard to break into private equity, for example, and you managed to do that. It's especially hard to do it when you don't have any experience, right? And I remember back in the day when I first entered the world right after college, and I had no experience, and I took on much different jobs than I have today, and it's taken me time to kind of build up to where I am today. So I'm curious from the panelists, how hard was it for you guys to break in, and any advice around that? I know Khary said his persistence is kind of what I got from him, and continue to talk to people. He was, before he landed on the private equity team, I could say that he was very artful and talking to everybody and getting everybody to advocate for him. So maybe we start with you, Khary, just to kind of touch on a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I think, again, one, persistence is that, and as a part of it. And I also say, I guess I'll do this. So that it was I was able to get into finance, but as you mentioned, once I knew what I wanted to do, be on investments, I think it was difficult, a little more difficult to break into that specific aspect. And I think there's sometimes in finance, there's a path you're expected to take to get there. So when your story deviates from the norm, it can be challenging at times. And so to answer the other part, the advice I would give is, additional advice I would give is, first would be to do more events like you all are doing today. The financial sector is very vast, and as you'll hear from from Stanley and Monet and everyone else, there's a lot of different pathways you can take. And so the more you do events like this and you speak to people, the more you'll just have a better understanding of the opportunities out there and what may or may not align with your own interest. And I think, the earlier you have that, just the better. And I think I definitely would have benefited from that early on. And then not to be long-winded, but the second would be more on the technical side for myself. I went to a liberal arts college in Williams, and so the curriculum is a little broader and doesn't have all the typical business or financial classes one may take. And so because of that, I learned a lot of the necessary skill sets like accounting and financial modeling after graduation, and through the training courses or through additional work in side projects. And the advice I would give to my young stuff is just to try and take those accounting and financial modeling courses as early as possible, especially if you're interested in the field, because those are fundamental skills and that are still so critical to a lot of opportunities that you'll see out there in the space, especially if you want to be especially on the investment side in the financial sector. So.
You guys just jump in if you guys have anything to share on that as well.
Yeah, I would say to be open as to kind of the different experiences out there. My path was a little bit easier because I came into the legal division, but it was definitely not something I thought I wanted to do. But just to be open and learning kind of all those things on the job, it's fun. I mean, a lot of the stuff I learned about assets and asset management was after I came to State Street. As Khary said, we'll probably talk about things that we may or may not have done differently. It probably would have been taking some of those courses that he had mentioned. I went to Boston College, and it was also liberal arts. So a lot of different fundamentals that were good, like good writing skills and good communication skills. But maybe some of the basics, when I think back on it, I would have probably, taking more business classes or kind of accounting or math. But I don't think that stops you, because as I said, you can get here as a different path, and then that's something you learn on the job. And it's nice to have a learning curve once you get somewhere. That's obvious. I've been here for so long, but the reason why it stays exciting is that I continue to learn and kind of learn different things about the profession I'm in. So that's what keeps it interesting.
Yeah.
And I would add, in terms of just breaking through the industry, I think it starts in events like this. It obviously starts in career fair events. I don't know if they do career fairs at the high level or collegiate level, but just trying to get a general idea of what you like to do at the end of the day. If you like to talk to people, you probably like sales. If you like numbers, you probably like to be an analyst. So once you find out what it is that you like to do, you just like Khary and Monet said, just start asking questions to maybe your mother or your dad. Start asking Google. Google is my best friend. I just start ask what's a stock, what's a bond, things of that nature, and that's how you can break through into the industry, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I think just to kind of recap, you gotta prepare skills, like the core skill sets, the fundamental skill sets. You gotta join a bunch of discussions just to explore. That probably goes first. And I think you need to prepare for your discussions, your one-on-one discussions that you line up and you network, right? You're trying to network with people. You're trying to meet new people. You never know who's going to lead you to what, but you don't want to go there completely cold and not have any knowledge about the company that they work for, what they do. So, just Google the company they work for, try to look them up on LinkedIn, try to get an understanding of what the industry it is that they work in. We're representing a lot of different businesses within State Street and asset management. We can get more specific later, but as you kind of navigate through all that, you can start doing some pretty focused research. And that's good advice, just to come prepared. That's the biggest takeaway, I think. So I'll turn it over to Susana for our next question.
Sure. Thank you, Jaime. I think it is really interesting, Stanley, how you mentioned that you should really try to think about what you like doing. Obviously, we spend a lot of time at work, and so it's important that you pick a career that really excites you, that's interesting and that's going to motivate you. And so I'd like to ask each of you, what do you enjoy most about current job responsibilities?
I can kick it off. I truly do enjoy the client experience. I love working with folks. I love giving them the opportunity to work with me. Not that it's a privilege or anything, but for most people, I truly do value the client experience. And, like I said, I'm very curious around, growing assets. They take on the care of, managing the assets of your mothers and fathers, of your grandmothers, your grandparents. And it's their responsibility to ensure that that those people are in safe hands with their financial advisor, whoever it might be. So that's what, and the trust aspect between myself and the financial advisor, that's what gets my gears going, I guess, when working with people.
Yeah, that's great. How do you get people to talk to you? I think a lot of young people hear sales and kind of get scared and think, oh, I can't do that. But tell us how, a little bit of an insight about how you start your day and maybe how you form these relationships.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times, or even small institutions from that standpoint, they have data, and it can, most of the time, can be a warm lead into working with someone. So if someone's already using your product, or if you know someone that may be using another provider's product, you could speak to that and try to just build a personal connection. A lot of the times on what I do on a day-to-day basis, especially with my partner, is we don't know the people that we're going to speak to. And it's our job to try to become as close as possible with them. A lot of the times they put their bios on their websites. I'm sure you guys have heard of LinkedIn. You can look at LinkedIn and try to grab as much knowledge as you possibly can about the client. But at the end of the day, it's not business. It's people are people. If they like sports, talk about sports. If they like music, talk about music. If that's something that's close to you and dear to you. So I think that's the best way in how we work with people, because at the end of the day, it's a love game. People are people, and they appreciate others. So I think that's how I get, or that's my advantage in terms of being able to connect with someone on a deeper basis.
That's great. Khary, how about you? What do you like most about your day-to-day and your responsibilities?
Yeah, so as being a more junior member of the team, I would say the one thing I really enjoy is just the variability of my day, day-to-day. One day I could be working on a client presentation, or the next I'll be helping underwrite a company, so really diving and understanding a company, presenting about it to the investment committee, or generally just doing research on into a new sector or a new company that we're trying to look at. Most recently we did deep dive into the venture space, which is just high level, just like startup companies. So understanding the environment of startup companies. And so my day-to-day responsibility is just a space of constant learning, which keeps me super excited and engaged on a day-to-day basis. And also just in this space, I get appreciative opportunity. I get to work and learn from incredibly accomplished individuals within State Street and with our partners. And again, like I said, you just never stop learning. And so it's probably one of the parts of it I enjoy the most.
That's
for
great.
myself.
It sounds like you're surrounded by really good people like Janelle and Jamie, and it sounds like a pretty analytical role. So we went from this sort of client-facing role, which is also pretty analytical in and of itself because the sale is quite technical, to really getting deep with the numbers. And what about you, Monet? Can you tell us a little bit about what you like about your job and sort of what kind of gets you excited to come into work each day?
Sure. I actually, like Stanley, love to interface with my client, and I get to do that by traveling to the companies that we work for, which is interesting in itself, and talking to the CFO or the CEO, because we are in charge of the stock of that company. So they're very interested to think, what are you going to do with my stock? How do you think of my stock? So we get to interact with a lot of different people, and that keeps it interesting. We haven't been traveling this past year, but that's usually a big part of my job. And if I would have thought back when, can I do sales? I would have never thought I'd do sales. But I think I don't consider it selling. I consider it believing kind of what my position is and what I do. And that authenticity comes through when you're talking with your clients and other people that you're representing, and really trying to make sure you're doing the right thing by all your clients. So that's what I enjoy. I also enjoy working with the team that I work with. I work in a very small group, and it's a group of 3 women, and that's not often the case. And we have a lot of autonomy because all of the women in that group have been together for a long time. So I enjoy just working with my colleagues and working with the clients that I interface with. That's what excites me each time I come into my job.
Great, thank you.
So I thought this might be a good opportunity to just take a couple of questions from the chat box, and I feel like I can take a crack at answering them, but everybody has a different perspective. So I invite anyone to just raise their hand within the panel if you want to take a shot at answering the question as well. So one of the questions that we're getting is a little bit. I think people are asking if we can provide a little bit of a different or a slightly different response to what is asset management, and I'll try to provide that in my view. And I think Stanley did a really great job describing it. At the end of the day, people invest. We help people invest to grow their money, and when you invest, you can lose your money too, right? So we help them manage risk. So you help them build diversified portfolios. You help them think about their portfolios and their asset allocation and what different types of assets they should invest in. So that's kind of how I describe it. Kind of another question is, what is fixed income? What is alternative investments? These are different asset classes. They all have different risk return profiles. For example, fixed income, you get a contractual return. Somebody says, I'm going to pay you this much interest rate, and then someday in the future, I'm going to return your money back in full. That's kind of that's what's called fixed income, because it provides you a fixed income over time. I think alternative investments could be anything from private equity, venture capital, hedge fund investing, and these are usually a lot more. You get a much bigger return, but you're taking on a little bit more risk. And one thing that you take on is called illiquidity, which is when you can't just go out and sell your stock the next day. You have to hold on to that until they sell that company because there's no buyer for it. So there's a lot of different asset classes, and we, as a big company, are able to play in all those different areas, which should be interesting to you guys if you're looking at careers in asset management to think about a company like ours, because you're able to pick which areas you like more, and then also if you get hired the company is really helpful in helping you transition into a different area, right? Because you might get bored, or you might grow an interest in a specific area. So that's me taking a shot at answering those two questions that I saw come up a few times on the chat. I invite others to chime in as well.
Jaime, I always think about fixed income as kind of the credit side, the debt side of the spectrum, and equity as, sort of the other side of things. So that's another way to maybe think about it as well.
Yeah, equity represents, I think some of you may know that equity represents a share. Usually a share represents ownership in the company. So you're basically the owner of that company. And in public companies, there's thousands of owners, and some people amass a lot of shares, and then they gain control, and then they can basically force that company to make specific decisions. But the equity is the owners, if they have debts, which is fixed income or debt or credit, they're all synonymous. If you lose, if the company loses value, and you get to the point where there's no equity to cover that value, then the debt holders take over. That's kind of how you can think about it. And so the equity has more risk than the debt. The debt could eventually become the owners in a restructuring. So I'm getting super technical, but I guess what I'm saying is, there's a lot of different areas, and it's really exciting. And knowing how it all works, you kind of get that exposure in asset management. But at the end of the day, we're helping people invest and be able to generate a return so that they can use that money for whatever they need it for. A lot of pension plans have responsibilities to pay their beneficiaries, for example. Somebody retires and they get a payment for the rest of their lives. The pension has to deliver on that, so they have to invest a certain amount of money so that they can grow that money and be able to pay people. If they run out of the money, then people could retire, and then basically they're out of luck. And so we help these pensions, as an example, ensure that they have enough money to be able to cover all their liabilities in the future. So maybe I'll go back to the prepared questions here, and we wanted to dive a little deeper in with Khary because of your experience in the ABC program. If you could share your experience of what it was like being in the program for you, and how was it to kind of transition out, and how do you keep in touch with your roots in the program?
Yeah, certainly. So I was a Better Chance scholar almost 12 or 13 years ago, which saying makes me feel older than I am. But I think the day Keith Wilkerson walked into my middle school undoubtedly changed kind of the trajectory of my life. Just a Better Chance just opened so many doors that I don't think I necessarily would have known existed otherwise. And I would say, luckily about my experience, I entered a Better Chance with a few of my, some of my closest friends to this day. So I didn't have to go through that journey alone, and I stay in touch. And that's one of the easiest ways to stay in touch. And also, I would say, my parents definitely, I was grateful that my parents allowed me to go through that journey just because of Better Chance and going to boarding school. If you're not familiar with the schools and the opportunities there, it's not always an easy conversation to have with parents, especially as a 13-year-old kid trying to convince your parents it's the best move. But luckily I did. It was one of the best decisions we made. Through a Better Chance, I was able to go to boarding school, which in itself is a whole experience, which I enjoyed. Some of my closest friends to this day still from that school. I got to play the sports I love there and in college. I started playing lacrosse, where I played in college, and it's really through those people and those kind of conversations I have with those friends and alumni, the kind of some of those conversations, you see lifestyles and you're asking questions. That's where I really probably started my interest in a career in the financial field. And I think those doors are all open, from the experience going through a Better Chance and You know, and that boarding school like led me to Williams and ultimately to, you know, State Street Global Advisors. I think now the way I stay in touch is luckily through the connections that we had with GE and with kind of State Street that we're redeveloping. I've been able to, you know, stay in touch that way, along with, you know, just my friends that I have made over time, and just constantly catching up and meeting up for just generally catching up when we can.
That's great. It's I'm sure very inspiring to have everyone in the audience see you sort of be, you know, a graduate from the program and to have ended up in such an interesting job. Stanley, I have a question for you. You referenced your partner, and I think it would be interesting for the audience to understand, you know, what you meant when you said your partner, and maybe tell the group a little bit about your career trajectory. Obviously, you started off in an entry-level role, and you've moved your way up into an external sales role, which is, you know, a highly coveted role. It takes a lot of work and dedication, but I think it would be interesting if you could just hone in on that a little bit for the audience.
Absolutely. So when I mentioned my partner, to give a little background, I worked on the internal desk, as Susana mentioned, and what that was is, you know, supporting an outside representative who was physically within the respective territory. So what I cover 5 states in the Southeast, both the Carolinas, Georgia, Mississippi, and Alabama. So I was the regional consultant, and I used to be on the desk where my partner, my business partner, you know, we worked together in working with all the financial advisors in our region. So I guess that's where I meant in terms of, you know, saying my partner. So my partner's my best friend, I would like to call him. I talk to him every single day, and we, you know, collaborate in our thinking together and how we're gonna, you know, approach the different clients. So I would say that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it sounds like you had a really tight relationship, and it kind of almost prepared you really well to get into that external role.
Absolutely, and as I mentioned before, you know, the hard work aspect, I think you get recognized within the company, whether it be, you know, sports or whether it be, you know, the financial industry. You know, through the hard work on the desk, I was able to, you know, really understand the product lineup, really understand what our clients were looking for, and now I have the fortunate ability of being a physical representative within our region. So the career progression, you know, typically you enter and you start off as an entry role, you know, associate, and then you get recognized, you know, through your hard work and you become a consultant. In our company, there's a little bit of a difference between an associate and a consultant. Consultant, you're pretty well versed across the product lineup, and then, you know, after that, if you look to explore and want to meet with clients physically, you move on to the regional consultant role. So it's a grind. And, you know, if you want to work with people and you want to be, well, what I do is sales. If you want to be a sales representative, that's the ladder of progression to get to where I am. So I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, before we move on, I would like to ask you one more question, because I know that part of being a sales professional in financial services requires some licensing. Can you speak a little bit about that? I know that when you first came in, you did not have the Series 7 licenses or the Series 63, and State Street sponsored you for those. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, that was such a long time. You know, during that period of time, you know, typically, as Suzanne said, a corporation has to sponsor you to be licensed to sell to a financial advisor or to consult a financial advisor, and sell securities, so investment securities. As I mentioned before, I sell ETFs, and prior to being able to do that and work with a client more intimately, it came down to the point of being able to, pass those tests. And I'll tell you, tests they're pretty difficult, but if you have your mind set and you're committed to it, you can get through. Some of the questions are pretty tricky, but I would say in order to be able to sell to a financial professional, you have to be licensed and sponsored by a company. So yeah, study hard for sure.
That's good.
So right now, why don't we go to Scott Johnson? We saw you raise your hand. I see you on the screen. If you still have a question, we invite you to unmute yourself and ask.
All right, thank you. My name is Scott Johnson. I'm a sophomore from Georgia, but I go to school in New Hampshire. But my question was just that, how do you think it would be best to go about like shadowing someone who's involved in finance, or just how would you go about like trying to gain experience just to get a better perspective of his interest?
So I'll take a first crack at answering your question, Scott, which is, I think your goal as a sophomore in college. You said you're a sophomore, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm a sophomore.
I think you're a sophomore in high school. Okay, cool. You look older. No, just kidding. So I think, right now in the stage, you're really early. You have so much opportunity ahead of you. And it really is, like, for example, you just met all of us, right? You can reach out to us, and we're happy to have a conversation with you and keep the dialogue going over your next few years. And it's all about, I think, at your stage, just networking and exploring and asking people what they do, and then just thinking hard to yourself: is that something that you could see yourself doing? Whether it's finance, whether it's another profession, it doesn't have to be asset management. I think this advice would apply across. And then your goal at some point may be to have like some sort of internship program where you can get real life experience. And when you enter into that program, you really should just try your hardest to add value any way you can, which means doing, being helpful, just being there, being a partner, as Stanley was saying, with the person he works with, to whoever you work with, and just having a good attitude. Eventually, you'll go to college. You'll build your skill set. You'll get more internship opportunities, and you'll build your experience and knowledge. So I think the good thing is that you're in these types of events now. When I was a sophomore, I had you guys are so far ahead of where I was. It's out of control. So I think you guys are going to be super successful. Just keep slowly kind of making progress. Anybody else?
I was going to say to Scott, actually, I know where you are, and I'm not very far from you. I'm in Massachusetts also, so I know where the Exeter School is. But I know the Massachusetts schools. I don't know. I know we have a lot of students from all around the country, but the Massachusetts schools, like when you're a junior, they have a shadow day, and that's a great opportunity. My son went to iRobot because he wanted to do engineering. But if you think of someone in this industry that you just want to shadow, and you guys have that at school, or you don't even have to have a specific sponsor day for that. But if you want to shadow someone, you just ask, can I shadow you for the day? And typically someone will bring you in. You can listen in as to kind of what a day looks like, with Stanley, or does a day look like with Dennis. We can't assure you it's going to be really exciting, but at least you'll get some flavor of, do I really want to, be sitting at a desk? Do I want to be making cold calls? Not that they do that, but kind of whatever you're thinking of that you might want to do, you might get a sense of by going and shadowing someone. Is that something you'd like to do or not?
All right, thank you.
Anybody else that wants to raise their hand and ask a question, feel free to. I think we'll find out that, and we'll be able to call your name. In the meantime, I think we can kind of go through the chat and see if there's any other any other questions here that we haven't addressed. Somebody asked what is the best way to begin investing in stocks. I'll leave that one to Stanley since he's an advisor to advisors. So
yeah, I'd say the best way to start doing it now would probably be through a brokerage platform. Quite frankly, I think you have to be of a certain age to start investing your own money. It could be completely wrong there, but it'd be through a brokerage platform. So like a Fidelity or a TD Ameritrade or a Charles Schwab. So that's how you would begin doing that. You know, there's Robinhood out there as well. I'm sure you guys have heard of Robinhood. Yeah. That's an easy way to. I stay away from that. I don't there. I mean, it's very possible to do it, but it ultimately comes down to, you know, you got to look at the share price of whatever the security is, or it's a bond or a stock. Probably going to be stock in your case. And you know, if a stock is $200, you save $200. You invest in that one stock. You pay a ticket charge. Most platforms now don't have ticket charges. You pay a ticket charge and you watch your money be invested.
Yeah.
So
the other thing, a lot of students that I've interviewed in the past have paper portfolios, and it basically, you know, they come up with an investment thesis, and they invest accordingly. So it's basically the same thing as a real portfolio, except, you know, it's kind of a trial run. It's called a paper portfolio. So that might be something to think about too before you put in some real money. You might want to see, okay, what if I did take, I don't know, take $1,000 and invested it in, call it 10 or 15 stocks. Where would it be? What would you do each day?
The only thing I would add is one of the most important things in finance is called diversification. It's the same concept as don't put all your eggs in one basket. So you could invest in a single stock, or you can invest in an ETF or a mutual fund that has, you know, I mean, some of them could have hundreds of stocks, right? And unless, like when you invest in a single stock, you really have to have conviction around what that company's doing, and you have to do a lot of research. When you invest in an ETF, you can just you're taking kind of like a view that your money, all those companies together are going to create value over time. And I have a friend, and this is just an anecdote, who started investing when he was 22 years old, and I'm 38 right now. He started investing when he was 22. He's the same age as me, and he was just putting in a little money every paycheck, or anytime he got a little extra money into the stock market. And this is kind of crazy, but just doing that, which was like $200 here, $200 there, he's now worth like almost $2 million. So so that's like an example of just being consistent. And I think you just invest in a diversified way, and you just keep at it, and you get interested in it. And I guarantee, like, I should never say I guarantee this but I almost guarantee it is you're gonna make a lot. You're gonna have a lot of money someday if you just do it very slowly, starting now. That's like, I think that's really good advice that I wish somebody would have told me a long time ago, because I've obviously missed out on the opportunity that my friend captured.
And the power of compounding. Yes. Oh.
Yeah, the power of compounding. That's kind of like, you know, you've probably heard of Warren Buffett. That's maybe part of how he made his money. I'm going to ask another question here from Peyton. After college, what is the best way to get in touch with businesses and find opportunities to start your practice? I think the question here is really rooted on networking here. And, you know, one of the best ways to do it today is just reach out on LinkedIn, you know, and send somebody an email and be like, hey, I'm interested in what you do, and would you have 15 minutes to talk to me? And I'm not sure if anybody else has any views, any other strategies.
Yeah, I think someone said in the chat as well, but also, you know, as you guys take advantage of your school's alumni. I find that that's extremely helpful. People are willing to, you know, you just automatically have something in common, and people are willing to, you know, talk to you and give advice. So that's another way.
I see a question there about can you make a lot of money in asset management? And I'll take that question just because I work in HR and my team makes all the offers, and I can attest to the fact that I think that there's really good career trajectory, and there's an opportunity to really make significant money. We have a pay for performance culture, and so what that means is that based on your contributions, you would be paid accordingly. So for example, in sales, the more you sell, the more you make. In investments, the idea is that the better your performance, your investment performance, the more you'll make. But I definitely think that one of the aspects about financial services that can be very alluring is probably the paycheck, especially for young people. I think you can make some fairly good compensation in the form of base and bonus, as an entry-level person even.
I'm gonna hold Susana to that one.
They'll all be knocking on my door.
So the next question I see here, in terms of providing financial advice, what tools or specific intricacies are most important to be successful in this job field? Maybe that sounds like an appropriate question for Stanley.
Sorry, I was on mute there. I would say the most important, so let me scroll to this question. The most important thing is just have the hunger and the desire to learn to be successful. And it's not even just learning what an investment is, what a bond is, what a stock is. It's learning what's most important to your client at the end of the day, right? I think the general curiosity across anything that you do allows you to be a little bit more knowledgeable upon it, and that's what ultimately brings success. But it's the curiosity and just trying to get an understanding towards what's going on, what's the profile, and I think that's how you can be especially successful in your job. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Stanley, I think that's an excellent point. And when we're interviewing entry-level talent, even at the internship level, one of the things that I look for is that intellectual curiosity. And I like to know what a candidate does just sort of to expand their knowledge. That tells me a lot about their drive and their desire to push themselves and learn more. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
I would also say that, and this might be kind of the innate lawyer in me talking, but don't try and sell something that you don't believe in. I think all of us do our jobs and do it probably well because we believe in kind of the product that we're selling and the company we represent, but you've got to find a place that feels good to you, and it feels like, so when you're selling something to your client, they feel that you believe in that product and you're just not, just another cold call. You're actually someone who believes in the product that they're selling. So whatever field you want to go into, do some research on the company and make sure it's something that you feel strongly belief in, and culturally it fits you and you can be your true self when you go every day to that company. That's really important.
Great advice. The next question I have is, if looking for a job in asset management, can I then trade for myself? And maybe, I know it's not a panelist, but we do have somebody from our compliance team here. So I don't know if, Rebecca, we can invite you to talk to us about this one.
I noticed how you stopped yourself from guaranteeing returns there, Jaime. So good job. It really depends. The financial services industry is highly regulated. So there are lots of different rules. There are lots of different regulators watching what we do to make sure that the market stays safe for everyone. I think the rules very much depend on the policies of various companies. So I think that's a really great question to ask as you're networking with folks. What are your company policies around personal trading? I think it also, for a lot of folks, when I talk to them, becomes an issue of time. When you're involved in financial services as your career, it's what you do for a good part of the day. And sort of off hours, I don't want to deal with money anymore. So it may be just sort of your personal preference too, that if it's something you're really passionate about, is that something you want to make a career out of, or is it something you want to stay as a hobby or something that you do for yourself? And there are so many options now too with, ETFs with managed money, where you just, you sort of hand over the responsibility to a financial advisor, one of those folks that Stanley's working with, and pay a fee. So there's lots of different ways to do it, but I think it's a great conversation to have as you're interviewing and networking. It shows some, insight into the industry too.
That's great. Yeah. So there's a way to do it. You are a little restricted, but we can all definitely invest, and we all try to have our own portfolios as well. But it is hard to spend too much time on it, because our primary responsibility is to make sure our clients are well off. So somebody asked, so it's actually Kennedy Williams. Can you talk about your next step in your career and what you plan to do to get there? And can you talk about what you do outside of work for leisure and fun? So I think I'll start real quick, and if anybody wants to share, I think the next step in my career would be to get promoted to the next level, which is managing director, like Janelle. Who I don't know if you guys have, I don't know if she introduced herself, but I think she's on the call. And that basically means doing the same type of work I do now, but really you would kind of lead the analysis and the underwriting process of investing in private companies. So right now I work very closely with peers of Janelle. So that's kind of, my next, goal. And for my leisure time, I love to be out on the water. I moved to Florida recently and bought a boat. So I spend a lot of my time boating. So, and there's Janelle, if she wants to say hello.
I might just add to that. For me, I've had the benefit of working on both the buy side and the sell side within investments. Combination of investment banking and now asset management. And I guess for me, I'm looking to round out my skill set and contribute to both the organization as well as my clients and partners like ABC in a variety of capacities, just to tap into all of the knowledge and skill sets that I've built over a 33-year career in financial services. So that would be my next step. And then after that, it's retirement. And in terms of what I do for fun, I play tennis 4 days a week because I think Khary alluded to the fact that there's a lot of variability in our day-to-day undertakings. One day you could be looking at, a $6 billion fund underwriting, or a consent request from a fund that's not doing so well and they need more time to create value. The CEO wants you to opine on your diversity and inclusion strategy. So it's a very variable day. And I think for me, what has been most beneficial in asset management is the exposure to all of these different aspects of, creating value for your clients. In our case at State Street, one of our largest clients continues to be PE, where we're managing the pension assets for all of their pensioners. So, you know, it's a job that, it's a responsibility that we take seriously, you know, our fiduciary responsibility. And by the same token, you know, you work hard, but then you play hard. So I think we have a great team. We're working on a number of great initiatives, including some of the work that we're doing with ABC and other platforms. But I think asset management is a very, very rewarding career. So that's all I would like to add.
That's great, Janelle. Thank you so much for your insight. We have been at this for over an hour, and I think in closing, it would be wonderful if the panelists could give us or the audience, you know, some words of wisdom. What would you have maybe done a little bit differently, or what advice can you give to our audience as they embark in their careers and their studies? Khary, how about we start with you?
Okay. No, I mean, I just as you know, you guys are very, as Jamie said, you guys are very early in your career. So I just, you know, the earlier you begin kind of working towards your goals, or just even having conversations to figure out what you like, I think it's going to put you guys in a great position for success in the future. And you know, that's kind of my you know, that's my, you know, advice, just to continue to do that and push forward. And also I just want to offer, you know, obviously we'll do a better chance if you would, you know, feel free to reach out to myself, or I'm sure anyone else on the panel, if you have, you know, additional questions or want to have conversations. I'm happy to have those with you all. So thanks for allowing me to speak to you guys.
Thank you, Khary. Stanley, how about you? What words of wisdom do you have for the audience?
Yeah, I would just say stay curious, and you know, and just be persistent in what you want. You know, like I said, I think my general understanding is being curious about money and how to raise money and how to continue to grow it. And I think general curiosity across anything, you know, in this world is going to get you to where you want to be. So you know, stay curious, stay hungry, and when you feel defeated, just keep pushing, because there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You know, I've learned that through sports. I've learned that through my job that I currently do today. So, and as Khary said, I'm happy to have any conversations with anyone here that's joined. So feel free to lean on me as well.
Thank you so much. And Monet, what would you like to impart? What words of wisdom?
I would probably say, I talk to lots of young people, and they're kind of trying to figure out before they go to college or right after, you know, what do I want to do? But I think like Khary and Stanley, go to school and keep your options open. Take a lot of different types of courses, because you just got to stay fluid. You don't know what you're going to be interested in, and you don't want to go and take a career path where in the end that's not where you wanted to go. So I would say go to school, you know, if you want to do business, but then take a lot of different types of courses in business, or do go in and get your liberal arts degree and take a lot of different courses, and then just be fluid as opportunities open for you. And it seems interesting, go with that, because every time you take on a new opportunity or kind of or speak to someone else, that you're going to learn knowledge and something that then piques something else that you might want to go into. So don't get down on yourself if you haven't figured out what you want to do in the future. No one knows that. None of us knew that before we probably ended up in asset management. So be open to yourself and be fluid.
That's great. Jamie, what about you? What words of wisdom do you have for this audience?
Yeah, I would, similar to Stanley, don't let anybody discourage you. You know, stay consistent, and you know, you've got so much opportunity ahead of you. I think, study hard, get good grades, position yourself to be the most competitive person that anybody meets when you interview for jobs, right? So you can have so many different opportunities to choose from. And that all starts now. You got to put the work in now, and then those opportunities are just going to be there for you. So I'm excited for you guys, and thanks again for the opportunity to talk to you today.
That's great. And I'll end by saying I'm just impressed that we have such a big audience, and the fact that you're even here listening to us speak and listening to our panelists means that you're taking your career paths very seriously, and that in and of itself is really impressive. So keep up that sort of curiosity, and to a point that somebody made earlier, it's okay if you don't know what you want to do. There's so many different types of ways to change careers. So in other words, if you start going down one path, it doesn't mean that you can't pivot and do something different. So you can capitalize on every experience to make it a better one in your next role. So thank you everybody for coming to this session. We enjoyed your really thoughtful questions, and I'll turn it over to Francisco.
And Susana, before you turn it over, I would just add one last word of advice. And I heard this from one of the former chairmen of Time Warner AOL. Work hard and be nice. So that's all I'll offer. That resonated.
Thank you so much, Chanel. I think Francisco's having some connectivity issues. So I'll step in and just say thank you to everyone on the panel. I wish we could all see each other. We give a round of applause, but we so much appreciate your time and effort and helping us to start embark on programming that we want to do more around post-secondary and career readiness. I also just want to thank the folks who attended tonight. Thank you for giving us your time and for thinking about how a Better Chance and the Better Chance community can be a place where you engage and you think about your potential and your possibilities, along with great career partners like State Street. So with that said, I wish you all a great night, happy holidays, stay safe, and we will see you at another thing very, very soon.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.